The metal doors of Kepler Station slid open with a soft hiss, and Sergeant Jake Morrison stepped into the diplomatic wing for the first time. His prosthetic legs made quiet clicking sounds against the polished floor as he walked down the long corridor. The station was huge, bigger than any military base he had ever seen. White walls stretched up to high ceilings, and blue lights ran along the edges like glowing rivers. Everything here was built to impress visitors from other worlds. Jake adjusted his dress uniform and checked his tablet one more time. The orders were clear but strange. He was supposed to work with an alien diplomat to prepare for something called a bonding ceremony. The whole thing sounded weird to him, but orders were orders. The brass had picked him for this job, and he would do it right. He had fought in 3 major battles before losing his legs to a mine explosion on Mars. The doctors had given him the best prosthetics the military had, but Jake still felt different. Other soldiers tried to act normal around him, but he could see it in their eyes. They saw him as broken, damaged goods. Maybe that was why they sent him here instead of back to a combat unit. The corridor ended at a large room with a curved glass wall that looked out into space. Stars dotted the darkness like tiny diamonds. Jake had seen space before, but it still made him feel small. Somewhere out there, alien ships were flying around, and some of them were coming here to meet with humans for the first time. A door opened behind him, and Jake turned around. What he saw made him freeze for a moment. The alien walking toward him looked nothing like the pictures in the briefing files. She was tall, maybe 6 feet, with a hard shell covering her body like armor. Her skin was dark green with lighter patches that looked like old scars. 2 large eyes sat on the sides of her head, and her mouth had 4 sharp mandibles that moved when she breathed. But what caught Jake's attention most were the other aliens behind her. They were the same species, but their shells were smooth and perfect. Their colors were brighter, and they moved with confidence. This alien moved differently, keeping her head down and staying a few steps behind the others. The group stopped in front of Jake, and one of the perfect-looking aliens spoke in broken English. "Human soldier, I am High Diplomat Zektar. This is Junior Diplomat Zixthara. She will work with you for the ceremony." Jake looked at Zixthara. She was staring at his legs, and her mandibles were clicking together quietly. The sound reminded him of nervous finger-tapping. "Nice to meet you," Jake said, extending his hand. Zixthara looked at his hand like she didn't know what to do with it. One of the other aliens whispered something in their language, and she quickly reached out to touch Jake's fingers with one of her clawed hands. Her shell felt warm and smooth, not cold like he expected. "I am Zixthara," she said in careful English. Her voice was soft and had a musical quality that Jake found pleasant. "I will help you understand our ways." The High Diplomat spoke again. "The bonding ceremony is very important. Our 2 species must show trust and partnership. Without this, there can be no alliance against the Void Swarm." He paused and looked at both Jake and Zixthara. "You 2 will represent our peoples. The ceremony requires intimate cooperation. You must be willing to share minds and bodies as mates do." Jake felt his face get hot. Nobody had mentioned anything about that in the briefings. "Sir, I think there might be some confusion." "I'm just a liaison officer. There is no confusion," the High Diplomat said firmly. "The ceremony has been performed by our people for thousands of years. It creates bonds that cannot be broken. Without it, we cannot trust humans enough to fight beside you." After the other aliens left, Jake and Zixthara stood alone in the big room. The silence felt heavy and awkward. Jake could hear the quiet humming of the station's life support systems and the soft clicking of Zixthara's mandibles. "This is pretty weird," Jake said, trying to break the tension. "I mean, they didn't really explain what this ceremony thing involves. Zixthara's mandibles clicked faster. "You do not want to do this," she said quietly. "You see what I am. Your people must think I am hideous." Jake frowned. "What are you talking about? You look fine to me. Different, sure, but not hideous." She turned her large eyes toward him, and Jake could see something like surprise in them. "My shell is scarred. My mandibles are not straight. Among my people, I am considered damaged, ugly. That is why they sent me for this task. They think if the ceremony fails, it will not matter because I am not important." Something in her voice reminded Jake of how he felt when people stared at his artificial legs. He knew the feeling of being seen as broken, as less than whole. "Hey," he said gently, "I've got fake legs and more scars than I can count. If we're talking about damaged, I think I win that contest." Zixthara's head tilted to one side, a gesture that seemed curious. "But you are a warrior. You earned those marks in battle." "That is different. Maybe to you," Jake said. "But plenty of humans see these legs and think I'm done for, washed up. They don't see a warrior. They see a guy who couldn't duck fast enough." They walked over to the window and looked out at the stars together. Jake noticed that Zixthara kept glancing at his legs when she thought he wasn't looking. He also noticed that she moved carefully, like she was trying not to draw attention to herself. "So this ceremony," Jake said, "what exactly does it involve?" Zixthara. Mandibles clicked nervously. "It requires two beings to join minds temporarily, to share thoughts and feelings, and ... She paused, her voice getting even quieter. "Physical contact." "Very close physical contact." Jake nodded. "And you're worried about what I'll think when we do that?" "I know what you will think," she said sadly. "You will see what I really am. The scars, the imperfections. You will understand why my own people avoid me." Jake was quiet for a moment. Outside the window, a ship was approaching the station. Its lights blinked steadily as it moved through the darkness. "You know what I think?" he finally said. "I think you're scared of the same thing I am." "What is that?" "That when someone really sees us, they'll decide we're not worth their time." Jake turned to look at her. "But here's the thing I've learned. The people who matter don't care about the scars, and the people who care about the scars don't matter." Zixthara was quiet for a long time. Her mandibles had stopped clicking, and she seemed to be thinking about what he said. Finally, she spoke. "Your people are very strange, Jake." Morrison. "Yeah," Jake said with a small smile. "We get that a lot." 3 days had passed since Jake and Zixthara first met, and they were spending most of their time in the station's Cultural Learning Center. The room was filled with books, videos, and interactive displays about both human and Zephyrian customs. Jake found himself learning things about aliens that no military briefing had ever taught him. Zixthara sat across from him at a metal table, her clawed fingers moving carefully over a human tablet. She was reading about Earth wedding ceremonies, her large eyes moving quickly across the screen. Every few minutes, she would make a soft chittering sound that Jake had learned meant she was confused or surprised. "Your people choose their own mates," she said without looking up from the tablet. "This is very strange to us." Jake looked up from his own reading about Zephyrian social structures. "How do your people do it?" "Families arrange partnerships based on genetic compatibility and social status. Physical perfection is very important. A scarred female like me would never be chosen under normal circumstances." Her mandibles clicked sadly. "That is why this ceremony is so frightening. You will see what I truly am, and you will understand why no one wants me." Jake set down his tablet and studied her face. Over the past few days, he had started to notice things about Zixthara that he found interesting. The way her shell changed, color slightly when she was thinking hard, how her mandibles moved in different patterns when she was happy versus when she was nervous. She had a graceful way of moving, despite her obvious self-consciousness. "Can I ask you something?" Jake said, "What happened to give you those scars?" Zixthara's shell darkened slightly. "When I was young, there was an accident at the Learning Center, a chemical fire. I was trapped under fallen equipment for many hours. The burns left permanent marks on my shell." She touched one of the lighter patches on her arm. "My parents were very ashamed. They sent me to live with my uncle, who taught me to speak other languages so I could be useful in some way." "Your parents were ashamed of you for getting hurt in an accident?" Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "That's crazy." "It is our way," Zixthara said simply. "Physical flaws suggest weak genetics. No family wants weak genetics in their bloodline." Jake shook his head. "Where I come from, scars tell a story. They show that someone survived something difficult. My squad leader back on Mars had a huge scar across his face from shrapnel. We didn't think it made him ugly. We thought it made him tough." Zixthara's mandibles stopped clicking. "You find scars attractive?" "Not attractive exactly, but not ugly either. They're just part of who someone is." Jake rolled up his sleeve to show her a long white line on his forearm. "Got this one when I was 12. Fell out of a tree trying to rescue my neighbor's cat. My mom wasn't ashamed of it. She said it showed I was brave enough to help someone else, even if it meant getting hurt." The alien diplomat stared at the scar with fascination. "Your mother praised you for being injured?" "She praised me for doing the right thing, even though it was dangerous." Jake rolled his sleeve back down. "That's kind of how humans work. We don't focus on the damage. We focus on what caused it and whether it was worth it." Over the following days, their conversations became deeper and more personal. Jake learned that Zixthara was incredibly intelligent and had mastered 7 different languages. She had studied human culture for months before this assignment, reading everything she could find about Earth history and customs. Her knowledge impressed him more than any perfect shell ever could. Zixthara, meanwhile, was puzzled by everything Jake told her about human relationships. "You say humans choose mates based on emotional connection," she said one afternoon while they practiced the ceremonial movements they would need to perform. "But what if the person is not physically perfect?" "Then we don't care," Jake said, trying to get the complex hand gestures right. "I mean, sure, people notice if someone is good-looking, but that's not what makes someone want to spend their life with them. What does?" Jake thought about it while they moved through the slow, dance-like motions. "Whether they make you laugh, whether they're kind to people who can't help them, whether they make you want to be a better person." He stumbled slightly on his prosthetic legs and had to catch himself. Zixthara immediately stopped the dance. "Are you hurt?" "No, just lost my balance. These legs don't always do what I want them to." Jake noticed how quickly she had moved to help him without any thought for herself. "See, that's what I mean. You didn't hesitate to help me. That's worth more than having perfect legs." "But your legs are perfect," Zixthara said, looking confused. "They are artificial, but they function. Well, they allow you to walk and fight. How are they not perfect?" Jake laughed. "Because they're not the ones I was born with. Some people see them and think I'm broken." "That makes no sense," Zixthara said firmly. "You survived an injury that would have killed others. You adapted and continued to serve your people. That is admirable, not shameful." "Maybe you should talk to some of my old squad mates," Jake said with a grin. They could use that perspective. As they worked together each day, Jake noticed that Zixthara was starting to change. She held her head higher when she walked. Her voice was getting stronger when she spoke. She even started correcting some of the other Zephyrian diplomats when they made mistakes about human customs. But as the ceremony date got closer, her anxiety returned. Jake would find her staring out the window at the stars, her mandibles clicking. In that nervous pattern, he had learned to recognize. "The ceremony is tomorrow," she said one evening as they sat in the observation lounge. "I have been thinking about what will happen when our minds connect." "What do you mean?" "In the ceremony, you will see my thoughts and memories. You will experience what it feels like to be me." Her shell had darkened to a deep green. "You will understand how ugly I really am, not just on the outside, but inside too. All the shame, all the times I have been rejected, all the ways I have disappointed my people." Jake was quiet for a moment. Outside the window, he could see ships arriving for tomorrow's ceremony. Representatives from both species would be watching, waiting to see if humans and Zephyrians could truly trust each other. "Can I tell you something?" Jake said finally. "I'm scared too." Zixthara turned her large eyes toward him. "Why would you be afraid? You are strong and brave." "Because you're going to see all the times I wanted to give up. All the nights I lay in the hospital, wondering if I would ever be useful again. All the moments when I felt sorry for myself, instead of dealing with my problems." Jake looked down at his hands. "You're going to see that I'm not nearly as strong as people think I am." "But you did not give up," Zixthara said softly. "You are here. You chose to keep fighting." "Yeah, and you learned 7 languages and became a diplomat despite everyone telling you that you weren't good enough." "Sounds pretty strong to me." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars and the arriving ships. Tomorrow would change everything, one way or another. The alliance between their peoples depended on whether 2 damaged individuals could find a way to trust each other completely. "Jake," Zixthara said quietly, "what if we both disappoint everyone?" "Then at least we'll disappoint them together," Jake replied. "That's got to count for something." The ceremony was supposed to happen in 12 hours, and Jake couldn't sleep. He had spent the evening reviewing the procedures one more time, but his mind kept wandering to what Zixthara had said about sharing thoughts and memories. The idea of someone seeing inside his head, seeing all his doubts and fears, made his stomach feel tight. He decided to take a walk through the station's quieter sections. The corridors were dimly lit during the night cycle, and his footsteps echoed softly. As he walked past closed shops and empty meeting rooms, he found himself heading toward the observation deck where he and Zixthara had talked on their first day. When the doors opened, he was surprised to see her already there. She was standing at the large window, looking out at the stars. Her shell seemed to glow slightly in the dim light, and she was making a soft humming sound that he had never heard before. "Couldn't sleep either?" Jake asked as he walked over to join her. Zixthara's mandibles clicked once. "I have been thinking about tomorrow, about what you will see when our minds connect." "Yeah, me too." Jake stood beside her at the window. Cargo ship was docking at one of the station's lower ports, its lights blinking slowly in the darkness. "Want to talk about it?" For a long moment, Zixthara was quiet. Then she began to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "When I was young, before the accident, I had a friend named Tixara. She was beautiful, with a perfect shell and bright colors that everyone admired. We would play together in the learning gardens, and she would tell me that we would be friends forever." Jake listened without interrupting, sensing that this was important. "After the accident, when my shell was scarred and my colors faded, Tixara stopped coming to see me. Her parents told her that being around damaged individuals might affect her own perfection. I waited for her every day for months, thinking she would remember our friendship. She never came." Zixthara's shell darkened. "When I finally saw her again at a public ceremony, she looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was something disgusting that she didn't want to acknowledge." Jake felt a familiar pain in his chest. "That's horrible. It taught me what I really—" Zixthara continued. "Something to be avoided. Something that reminds others of what they could become if they are unlucky. Tomorrow, when you see my memories of that day, when you feel the shame and rejection I felt, you will understand why this ceremony cannot work." Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking about his own memories. "Can I tell you about something that happened to me?" Zixthara nodded. "After I lost my legs, they sent me to a rehabilitation center on Earth. There was this physical therapist there, a woman named Amy. She was probably the most beautiful person I had ever seen, and she was always encouraging, always positive. She helped me learn to walk again, and I thought maybe she cared about me as more than just a patient." Jake paused, watching a small transport ship move slowly past the window. One day, I heard her talking to another therapist in the hallway. She was complaining about how depressing it was to work with amputees all day. She said she couldn't wait to transfer to a different department so she wouldn't have to deal with broken soldiers anymore. Jake's voice was steady, but Zixthara could hear the old hurt in it. "She called us broken soldiers, like we were just damaged equipment that couldn't be fixed properly." "That must have been very painful," Zixthara said softly. "It was. For a while I believed her. I thought that was how everyone saw me. Broken, unfixable, something to be pitied and avoided." Jake turned to look at Zixthara. "But then I met other people who didn't see the prosthetics first. They saw me." "What do you mean?" Jake thought about how to explain it. "There was this old sergeant in my unit, a guy named Pete. He had lost an eye in combat 20 years earlier. When I came back to active duty, I was sure everyone would treat me differently. But Pete just looked at my new legs and said, 'Nice upgrades. Do they come with better grip?'" Zixthara's mandibles moved in. What Jake had learned was curiosity. "He made a joke about your injury?" "Yeah, and it was perfect. He wasn't ignoring what had happened to me, and he wasn't treating me like I was fragile. He was treating me like I was still the soldier I had always been, just with different equipment." Jake smiled at the memory. "That's when I realized something important about humans." "What?" "We're really good at adapting. Not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. When something bad happens to us, we don't just survive it. We find ways to make it part of our strength." Jake gestured toward his legs. "These aren't just replacements for what I lost. They're proof that I refused to give up. They're proof that I found a way to keep going." Zixthara was staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You see your injury as a source of power?" "Not the injury itself, but what I did after it. The choice to keep fighting, to keep trying, to keep believing that I had value, even when I felt broken." Jake looked out at the stars again. "That's what humans do. We take the worst things that happen to us and find ways to make them meaningful." "But what about the people who rejected you, who saw you as damaged? What about them?" Jake shrugged. "Amy was wrong about me, and your friend Tixara was wrong about you. Their opinions don't define who we are." Zixthara was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "You are saying that my scars do not make me ugly?" "I'm saying that your scars are just scars. They're part of your story, but they're not the whole story." Jake looked at her directly. "You want to know what I see when I look at you?" She nodded, her mandibles clicking nervously. "I see someone who learned 7 languages because she wanted to understand other species. I see someone who was given the worst diplomatic assignment possible and decided to do it better than anyone expected. I see someone who cares enough about others to worry about disappointing them." Jake's voice was warm and sincere. "I see someone who survived something terrible and chose to use that experience to help others." Zixthara's shell had been gradually changing color as he spoke, shifting from dark green to a lighter, warmer tone. "You truly see me this way?" "Yeah, I do. And tomorrow, when we do this ceremony, you're going to see that I mean it." "You're going?" To feel what it's like to see yourself through the eyes of someone who doesn't think you need fixing. They stood together in comfortable silence, looking out at the vast field of stars. Tomorrow would bring the ceremony that would determine whether their species could work together against the coming threat. But tonight, two individuals who had been told they were broken were discovering that maybe they were stronger than anyone had ever imagined. "Jake," Zixtara said quietly, "what you have, this ability to see strength in damage, to find hope in difficult circumstances, is this common among humans?" Jake thought about it. "I think it's one of our best qualities. We're stubborn about giving up. We're really good at finding reasons to keep going, even when everything looks hopeless." "That is what our alliance needs," Zixtara said with growing certainty. "Not just your weapons or your ships. Your refusal to surrender." "And we need your precision and intelligence," Jake replied. "Your ability to plan and think ahead." For the first time since he had met her, Zixtara stood up straight and proud. "Perhaps we are not as broken as we thought." "Maybe we never were," Jake said with a smile. Jake woke up to the sound of alarms echoing through the station. Emergency lights were flashing in his quarters, casting red shadows on the walls. He grabbed his uniform and rushed to put it on, his prosthetic legs moving quickly as he got dressed. Whatever was happening, it wasn't good. The corridors were full of people running in different directions. Human officers were shouting orders, while Zephyrian diplomats chittered anxiously in their own language. Jake caught a passing lieutenant by the sleeve. "What's going on?" Jake asked. "The Void Swarm, sir. They've moved faster than we expected. They just wiped out the Kepler colony, and they're heading this way. Command says we have maybe 2 days before they reach the outer defense grid." Jake felt his blood go cold. Kepler colony had over 1 million people. If the swarm had destroyed it, that meant they were more powerful than anyone had imagined. He hurried toward the diplomatic wing, looking for ZYX_THARA. He found her in the cultural center, surrounded by other Zephyrian diplomats who were speaking rapidly in their clicking language. When she saw Jake, she moved away from the group to meet him. "You heard the news," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah. How bad is it?" "Very bad. The swarm ships are unlike anything we have seen before. They seem to absorb energy weapons and use them to grow stronger. Our combined fleets managed to damage them, but not enough." Her mandibles clicked with worry. "The High Command is meeting now to decide whether to attempt the ceremony today or evacuate the station." Jake looked around the room at all the frightened faces, both human and alien. "What do you think we should do?" "I think we should proceed with the ceremony," Zixtara said firmly. "If our species are going to face this threat, we need to trust each other completely. Half measures will not be enough." Before Jake could respond, High Diplomat Zixtar entered the room with several human officers. Their faces were grim. "The ceremony will take place in 4 hours," Zixtar announced. "Both of our species' survival may depend on the alliance we forge today. Sergeant Morrison, Junior Diplomat Zixtara, you understand what is at stake." After the officials left, Jake and Zixtara walked to their usual spot by the observation window. Outside, they could see ships arriving constantly. Warships, supply vessels, and civilian transports all crowding around the station. Everyone was preparing for what might be the last battle for both species. "Are you ready for this?" Jake asked. Zixtara was quiet for a moment. "I want to ask you something first. This morning, when you learned about the swarm attack, what was your first thought?" Jake considered the question. "Honestly, I thought about all the people who are going to die. And then I thought about what we could do to stop it." "You did?" "Not think about running away? No, that never occurred to me." Jake looked at her curiously. "Why?" "Because that is what makes humans different," Zixtara said. My people are logical. When we face impossible odds, we calculate the probability of success. If it is too low, we retreat and look for better opportunities. But humans do not think that way. What do you mean? You see impossible odds, and you think, how can we make this possible? You refuse to accept that some things cannot be done. Her shell was shifting to a brighter color. Yesterday, I was afraid at the ceremony because I thought you would see my flaws and reject me. But now I understand something important. What's that? Humans do not see flaws the way we do. You see challenges to overcome. When you look at my scars, you do not see damage. You see evidence that I survived something difficult. When you lost your legs, you did not see yourself as broken. You saw yourself as someone who needed to adapt. Jake nodded. Yeah, I guess that's true. That is what our alliance needs, Zixthara continued. Not just shared technology or combined military forces. We need the human ability to refuse defeat. And you need our ability to plan and calculate the best strategies. They spent the next few hours in preparation for the ceremony. The ritual itself was complex, involving specific movements, words, and finally, the mental connection that would allow them to share thoughts and emotions. Other diplomatic pairs from both species would be watching, along with military commanders, who would decide whether to proceed with the alliance based on what they witnessed as the time approached. Jake found himself thinking about what Zixthara had said about humans refusing to accept defeat. He had never thought about it that way before, but she was right. Throughout human history, people had faced impossible situations and found ways to survive them. Not because they were stronger or smarter than everyone else, but because they were too stubborn to give up. Zixthara, he said as they prepared to enter the ceremony chamber. You asked me what I have that makes humans special. I think I know the answer now. What is it? Hope. Not the kind of hope that sits around waiting for things to get better. The kind of hope that gets up every morning and decides to make things better, even when it seems impossible. Her mandibles moved in. What he had learned was a smile. And you are going to share that with me in the ceremony? If you want it, I do, and I will share with you our greatest strength, which is the ability to see clearly, even when emotions are strong. The ability to find the best path forward, even in chaos. She stood straighter. Together, we will be stronger than either of our species could be alone. The ceremony chamber was large and circular, with representatives from both species sitting in tiers around the central area. Jake and Zixthara entered together, and Jake could feel hundreds of eyes watching their every move. The pressure was enormous, but he found that he wasn't nervous anymore. He was focused on the task ahead. They began with the ritual movements, flowing through the complex dance-like patterns they had practiced. Jake's prosthetic legs moved smoothly, and Zixthara's scarred shell gleamed under the ceremonial lights. To the observers, they looked like two very different beings learning to move in harmony. Then came the words, spoken first in Zephyrian, and then in English. Promises of trust, of partnership, of commitment to each other's well-being. Jake found that he meant every word he spoke. Finally, they approached the moment of mental connection. Zixthara placed her clawed hands on either side of Jake's head, and he put his hands gently on her shoulders. The contact was warm and oddly comforting. Are you ready? She asked softly. Yeah, Jake said. Show me what you've got. As their minds began to connect, Jake felt a sensation like falling upward into light. He could sense Zixthara's thoughts touching his own, and for the first time, he truly understood what it meant to see the universe through alien eyes. And what he saw, there was not ugliness or damage, but a brilliant mind that had turned every challenge into an opportunity to grow stronger. He felt her memories of pain and rejection, but he also felt how she had transformed those experiences into empathy and determination. She was not broken. She was magnificent. At the same time, Zixthara was experiencing Jake's memories and emotions. She felt his moments of despair after losing his legs, but she also felt his incredible resilience. She experienced his refusal to give up, his determination to keep fighting, and his genuine care for others. This was what human hope felt like. From the inside, not blind optimism, but a choice to keep trying no matter what. When the connection ended, both of them were changed. They looked at each other with new understanding, and then turned to face the assembled representatives. "It is done," High Diplomat Zektar announced. "The bond has been formed." But Jake and Zixthara knew it was more than just a diplomatic ritual. They had discovered something that neither species had possessed alone, the perfect combination of hope and wisdom, of determination and strategy, of human stubbornness and Zephyrian intelligence. The alliance was no longer just an agreement between governments. It was a true partnership, forged between two beings who had learned to see strength in each other's supposed weaknesses. The battle against the Void Swarm began 18 hours after the bonding ceremony. Jake found himself on the bridge of the human flagship Defender, standing beside Admiral Kate Rodriguez as she coordinated the combined fleet. Through the main view screen, he could see the approaching enemy ships, dark, twisted things that seemed to bend light around themselves like black holes with teeth. Zixthara was on the Zephyrian command ship Bright Talon, serving as the primary liaison between the two fleets. The mental bond they had formed during the ceremony allowed them to communicate instantly across the vast distances of space, sharing thoughts and tactical information faster than any radio transmission. "Jake," came Zixthara's voice in his mind, "the swarm ships are not following any logical attack pattern. They are moving like living creatures, not machines." Jake concentrated and sent his thoughts back to her. "That's because they are alive, in a way. Our intelligence says they're some kind of hybrid between technology and biology. That's why energy weapons just make them stronger." Through their connection, Jake could feel Zixthara processing this information with her species' incredible analytical abilities. Within seconds, she had formulated 3 different tactical approaches and was already testing them against various battle scenarios in her mind. "Physical projectiles," she concluded. "Kinetic weapons that cannot be absorbed. But we need precise targeting too.